There are plenty of words that you can use to describe the films of Spike Lee. Powerful, incendiary, controversial, genius. For almost 30 years, Shelton Jackson Lee has been on his grind at the forefront of American cinema. Not one to sugarcoat or shy away from hot-button issues, Lee challenges us to think critically about the world around us. The following is my personal top 10 list of my favorite Spike Lee joints, ranging from engrossing character studies to bold explorations of race relations. Let's check it out. Spike Lee's 1991 feature, Jungle Fever, is a mighty interesting film, and while it's not entirely perfect, it's certainly worthy of the number 10 spot. Wesley Snipes stars as Flipper Purify, an African-American architect who engages in an affair with his Italian-American co-worker, Angie Tucci. Despite their attempts to keep their tryst a secret from their loved ones, everyone they know eventually finds out about their affair, and the dramatics ensue. Addressing the dynamic of interracial relationships, which to this day is still taboo in more ignorant circles, Jungle Fever is a provocative discussion starter. The film also touches on issues of colorism within the black community, sparking debates among some of the characters concerning the whole light-skinned versus dark-skinned issue. Samuel L. Jackson also turns in a noteworthy performance as Flipper's drug-addicted brother, Gator, and Halle Berry also makes her debut as Gator's cracked-out girlfriend. Last but not least, the eternally dignified presence of the late great veterans Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis sweetens the deal. Four Little Girls is an excellent documentary about the 1963 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama that took the lives of four young girls, Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. Featuring interviews with the girls' relatives and friends, Lee's documentary is an unforgettable chronicle of such a tragic and shameful act of hatred. There is one memorable scene in particular which features an interview with the late Alabama Governor George Wallace, the man who infamously coined the phrase segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. The elderly Wallace trots out an aide of his, a black man who he refers to as his best friend, and the aide just looks at Wallace with a mixture of pity and disdain. Spike Lee's first feature-length film, She's Gotta Have It, released in 1986, follows Nola Darling, an independent 20-something woman who's simultaneously seeing three different men: the respectful Jamie Overstreet, the vain Greer Childs, and the loudmouth bicycle messenger Mars Blackman. They each want Nola for themselves, but she refuses to be a one-man woman. She's Gotta Have It is empowering in his portrayal of Nola Darling, charismatically played by Tracy Camilla Johns, who challenges the male patriarchal norms of female sexuality, especially those of black women. She upturns the double standards formed by hypermasculinity while never reducing herself to be a stereotypical whore. Lee's flick is regarded as one of the key debut features in independent cinema, and if you're a fan of his work, you definitely should check this film out and witness how it all began. A story of jazz, love, and everything else in between, Mo Better Blues is a classy picture. Denzel Washington stars as Bleak Gilliam, a jazz musician who's dealing with professional struggles and personal dilemmas. Featuring the smooth sounds of Bill Lee, Terrence Blanchard, and the Branford Marsalis Quartet, Mo Better Blues is one of Lee's most distinctive joints. Crooklyn is a wonderfully crafted portrait of a black family living in 1970s Brooklyn. Zelda Harris leads the way as 9-year-old Troy Carmichael, the second youngest sibling in her family. Harris infuses her performance with innocence and beyond her years' maturity. Alfre Woodard and Delroy Lindo play the parents of Zelda and her four other brothers. Featuring a splendid soundtrack comprised of classic 1970s songs, including People Make the World Go Round by the Stylistics, Crooklyn is a feel-good nostalgic trip that's definitely worth taking. It's been 9 years since Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in August 2005, and it seems to have become a distant memory in the American consciousness. Originally airing in August 2006, Spike Lee's compelling documentary, When the Levees Broke, is presented in 4 one-hour acts that each explore a different aspect of the events that transpired before, during, and after Katrina's devastation. Throughout the course of the film, Lee maintains an invisible presence, letting the survivors tell their stories. The survivors' collective voice in the film is one of just frustration, anger, sorrow, and disappointment. The film considers various reasons for the initial lack of response from authorities to address the situation, but two take precedence. One, racism. New Orleans is 70% black, and two, classism. Many of the residents were living at or below the poverty line. When the Levees Broke is a monumental documentary that is unquestionably required viewing for every American citizen. The events of Katrina should not be forgotten by anyone, as they highlighted that America still has a long way to go in proving that all individuals, of all classes and colors, are created equal. Inside Man is a departure from what we're used to seeing from Spike Lee, as the film is a tightly constructed heist thriller, but the film still contains plenty of stylistic and thematic elements found in his other works. The film follows criminal Dalton Russell and his crew who stage a major bank robbery with several hostages. Detectives Keith Frazier and Bill Mitchell are sent as negotiators to address this crisis. Meanwhile, a mysterious power broker, Madeline White, arrives at the scene for reasons of her own. More than just another heist film, Inside Man transcends its own genre's conventions and offers a fresh, gripping, and relevant approach to viewers. Spike Lee's 2002 feature 25th Hour is one of his greatest films, and every time I watch it I'm just as moved by it as when I saw it for the first time. Edward Norton plays Montgomery Brogan, a convicted drug dealer who has one last day of freedom before serving a 7-year prison sentence. On his last day, Brogan attempts to tie up loose ends in his life, spending time with his girlfriend, Naturelle, played by Rosario Dawson, and his two childhood friends, the brash Wall Street trader Frank, played by Barry Pepper, and Jacob, a socially awkward high school teacher, played by the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. During the course of the film, we see Monty contend with feelings of betrayal and furious anger over his impending imprisonment, and like him, we question where the loyalties of his circle really lie. What is definitely the most striking sequence in the film is a hate-filled, profanity-laced tirade that Monty delivers to his reflection, lashing out at any and all ethnicities and groups in his native New York. We see a man who, in his anger, projects his own failures and bitterness towards others. 25th Hour is an excellent and emotional narrative, and the somber score by Terence Blanchard adds even more pathos to this story. My second favorite Spike Lee joint is his 1992 biographical classic, Malcolm X. Denzel Washington stars in the greatest role of his career as civil rights leader Malcolm X. So uncanny is his portrayal that if you close your eyes and listen to Washington's Malcolm speak, you'd swear that you're listening to the actual man himself. This epic 3-hour biopic presents the life and career of Malcolm X in incredible detail. This film was one that absolutely needed to be made. You see, I remember growing up having never learned about Malcolm X and his legacy in school, and the reason I was usually given by teachers was that he was quote-unquote too controversial because he hated white people. Wow, talk about an overly simplistic and myopic view of the man. However, learning about Martin Luther King was universally considered to be completely safe. Now subsequently, everything I learned about Malcolm X was entirely outside of the classroom, researching the man's life via his autobiography, speeches, and other sources, and the primary springboard for me was Spike Lee's film. Anchored with strong supporting performances, most notably by Angela Bassett as Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X is a definitive classic, and while it does take dramatic liberties as all biographical films do, the movie is an excellent jumping off point for anyone who wants to start learning about Malcolm X and his legacy. And here we are with my favorite Spike Lee joint of all, the third feature in his filmography, Do the Right Thing. This film is an enormously significant masterpiece in cinema. It's a gripping exploration in racial tension, brilliantly represented by the rising heat of a hot summer day and the melting pot of Brooklyn. Throughout the film, we are introduced to a bevy of distinctive characters, starting with the protagonist, Mookie, played by Spike Lee himself, a pizza delivery guy juggling issues between his job at Sal's Pizzeria as well as his girlfriend Tina, played by an electrifying Rosie Perez. We've got Radio Raheem, He of the love and hate brass knuckles and the boombox blasting Public Enemy's classic anthem Fight the Power, which is also a major message and rallying cry in itself. There's the aforementioned Sal, played by Danny Aiello, and his two sons, the easygoing Vito and the prejudiced douchebag Pino, courtesy of John Turturro. And there's also Samuel L. Jackson's role as the DJ Mr. Senor Love Daddy. Yeah. And who can forget the neighborhood drunk, the mayor, and mother sister, respectively brought to life by Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee? And there's yet even more unique characters still. The film builds towards a climactic riot that's spurred by the death of a key character, and this incident soon follows with two polarizing quotes from Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, the former advocating nonviolence and the latter advocating violence as a justified means to counter oppression. This scene was viewed as highly controversial by both critics and audiences alike, and the film does not provide any easy answers whatsoever. Rather, the film challenges the viewer to do the right thing, whatever that may be, depending on one's perception. Each of the key characters have their reasons, and no one is left entirely blameless. The question is, could we allow ourselves to understand their motivations? A vibrant and colossal examination in the dynamics of racial prejudice, Do the Right Thing is just as timely today as it was when it impacted audiences 25 years ago. And since this is the 25th anniversary of this iconic Spike Lee joint, now is the time for new generations to learn what it's all about. Alright, so there it is, my top 10 list of my favorite Spike Lee joints. And if any of these films have piqued your interest in any way, I also recommend checking out the following Spike Lee films as well: Bamboozled, Get on the Bus, School Days, Red Hook Summer, and If God Is Willing and the Creek Don't Rise, which is the 2010 follow-up to When the Levees Broke. Highly recommended. So here's a question that I have for you. What is your favorite Spike Lee film? Whatever it is, leave your thoughts on the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Victor Omoayo, and there's more video essay goodness to be had right here on the Victor Omoayo channel.